Hello, friends. Today's episode is another presented in two parts. The first, the original recording made a few months ago, and the second, a follow-up after all the recent world events. Enjoy. Welcome to the Memories of a Moonbird podcast, exploring life one story at a time. Hello, friends. Today on the show, I'm excited to welcome one of my favorite people from across the proverbial pond. Whether it's TV sitcoms, dramas, soap operas, movies, or voicing video games for more than 30 years, he's been in all of them. His super impressive list of credits includes Seinfeld, Buffy, General Hospital, Gilmore Girls, Bones, The Social Network, Friends, Austin Powers, Mad Men, Castle, The Big Bang Theory, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and classic video games like Lord of the Rings. He's the calm, cool British character actor you've enjoyed countless times, but may not know by name. He's funny, charming, and smart as a whip, and he's not only a fellow world traveler, but he came to America as an immigrant, something we're going to dig into a bit. He's also very passionate about food, another thing we have in common, and our shared love of great baked goods has led to a very friendly rivalry that he aptly named the Game of Scones. He'll tell you with his dry and wry sense of humor that, quote, being originally British, I have no emotions, but we'll see about that. Please welcome my friend, the deeply talented and charming Oliver Muirhead. Oliver, welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's jump right in. You are originally from the UK.
I am, yes.
What was life like growing up there?
Well, I felt that it was dull and boring because I thought that I should actually be someone else, somewhere else.
Who did you want to be? And where did you want to be?
I don't know. I think unless you're in the 1% in England, because it's such a class-ridden society, you feel lesser than you should be. It's like all this school literature, including, Hogwarts, is based around, yes, even the imaginary schools are all private schools. And the rest of us are like, oh,
are you Gryffindor, or what school do you?
No, I think I was probably a house elf, a very tall house elf. I'm not even allowed to be a wizard.
So the class system in England, for those who don't know, can you describe the general kind of how it all works? How it's different than America, at least, because you've been here quite a while.
In England, certainly, there's a very clearly defined class system with the upper classes, the aristocracy, lords and ladies and so on, the current prime minister and the entire cabinet, for example, people who have been to very expensive private schools and then on to Oxford and Cambridge University. Then there's the upper middle class, slightly lower than them. Then there's the middle class, sort of Charles Dickens types.
And where do you fit in all this?
I don't know that I do, really. I'm a lot more comfortable being a pretend English person in the United States. I'm a lot more comfortable being an other, let's say, because when I went to school in South London, where everybody speaks like this.
And sounds like Michael Caine.
Yeah, exactly like Michael Caine, because Michael Caine is a god. Just let me tell you that. And a lovely man. If I spoke like this at school, people would beat me up. If I spoke like this at home, my mum would beat me up. And she fought Klitschko twice. So it's like, talking one way with your friends and then talking another way in public. Like my wife is originally from Long Island, and she has a very New York accent when she's talking to all her New York friends, and much softer, more Californian when she's talking to the rest of us.
Are you more inclined to just be Oliver, the British man, talking a single way in what you do in life as you've gotten older, or do you feel like you do that as well? Like, do you slightly change your accent or the way you speak for different people?
Yes, and I think everybody does. There was a comedy show about what it means to be English, and one of the elements was you change your accent and your personality depending on who you're talking to. And I think everybody does that to a degree. You have to be careful that you're not like Peter Sellers.
How so? Pink Panther?
The story of Peter Sellers was that if he was with anybody for more than about 5 minutes, he would start mimicking their voice.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And of course, there's temptation to do that as an actor.
Yeah.
Is you kind of slip in, because you want to be liked. I think it's that simple. You're not,
and you want
rude.
the sense of familiarity with these people you're hanging out with, so they don't see you as a stranger, an outsider.
Exactly, and I think the human desire to fit in.
So circling back to life in the UK growing up, were you and your family ever affected by all the religious troubles in Ireland and all the conflict in the UK?
Not really.
Well, that is not a very exciting story then.
Sorry. I think, like most people, we lived our own little lives. You know, that you talk to people who live in areas of like appalling trauma where there's a lot of death and destruction going on. Lebanon, for example, Beirut.
Syria, sure.
And it sounds like the whole city is on fire. But you talk to people who travel there regularly and they say, no, it's only a couple of blocks, you know. I mean, and if you talk to Europeans about Los Angeles, they're quite convinced that there are gang members running through the streets, firing weapons at all times, you know. And I think that's part of the way the news likes to portray the other.
I experienced the same thing when I went to Israel, actually. My family was very concerned that it was going to be crazy, and I went there, and we did actually experience, we witnessed a small bit of violence, but the rest of the time we were traveling around the country, it was fine.
My father worked in Israel for many years. My dad adored working in Israel, absolutely loved it. But he did find himself once swimming on a mined beach.
Oh.
He couldn't understand why the IDF was standing, screaming, waving their arms at him from about 200 yards away. And eventually somebody who spoke English said, "It's mined. Look." And he went, "Oh, I see."
I hope he walked very carefully.
They were able to bring him back in, yeah.
Did you travel with your family when you were growing up?
Not a lot. It was very expensive traveling when I was young. When I was very young, my great-grandmother was still alive, and she lived in Paris. And she paid for her only grandchild at that point. I am an only child, except for my brother and sister. So she paid for us, me, my father and mother, to come over to Paris and so that she could be with me, which was lovely. So,
and this was how old?
I was probably about 4 or 5, I think, when she died. So when I was very young, I was bilingual. You know, I spoke both languages badly, which I've continued to do.
I only speak English badly. I'm just one
an idiot monoglot.
Yeah, I'm single lingual.
Come on, you got like 3 words of Hebrew. Come on.
I can say toda and shalom. That's 2.
That's it.
You're giving me too much credit. You mentioned before that your father and grandfather, I believe, wrote a
my
famous
grandfather and his brother. Sorry. My grandfather, my great-grandfather, and my great-grandfather's brother.
Wrote a travel
book. My great-grandfather's brother was a journalist, and he wrote a couple of actually quite influential books.
On travel.
Yes, the most influential would be the Baedeker Guide to the United States and Canada, because he worked for Baedeker, the great German guidebook writer, probably the first, I think, maybe Murray's was the first, but anyway, one of the first guidebook writers in Europe.
And this is about what era?
This would be the late 19th century.
This is essentially a predecessor to Fodor's and Lonely Planet and all those.
Yes, and in the early part of the 20th century, when there was clearly going to be a war between Great Britain and Germany, they left Baedeker's and they started the Blue Guides, which was a big deal for a long time. And there were Blue Guides to pretty much all of Europe. And I believe there still are. The early ones are quite funny, very dry Scottish humour. Uncle Jim and my great-grandfather, 2 dry Scottish guys from Edinburgh.
When do you think you picked up the travel book? Like what age? And was there any kind of singular experience that, helped you go, oh, wow, I think I really want to do this?
My grandmother took me to Paris to see her friends, relatives, and some of my great-grandmother's friends. And she also took me to Venice.
Italy, yeah, not Venice Beach.
No, not Venice Beach, yeah. Although I have been to both, and they're both charming.
I can just see your grandmother being like, I wanted you to see all these weightlifters and these marijuana stores.
She would have actually enjoyed it. She was a great traveler. She was, whenever we went, she would go to France a couple of times a year, and she had this method of going that was inexpensive and efficient. So we'd take the train down to a tiny little airport on the south coast of England, get on this tiny little plane, fly over to an equally tiny airport on the French side called Le Touquet, where the baggage handler would take all the baggage off the plane and then put on a different hat and become the customs guy and passport guy. So you just sort of wear these different hats.
Now, was this one of those little small planes that you actually had to be seated by your weight so the weight was distributed correctly? Because I've flown on one of those before. I was weighed before I got in the plane. And
I don't remember that. I think they just didn't bother. They just, we were sort of barely skimming the tops of the waves on the channel, and then we would arrive, and then we would take a train into Paris. And my grandmother would have packed an entire feast for us,
awesome.
Which she would offer to other people in the carriage. It was awesome.
So, do you think that's the experience that made you really feel the hunger for travel? For new experiences?
Yes. And it also made me realize that whenever I went somewhere, I would need some of the language, at least, like the what they call the honorifics, please, thank you, good morning, and so on.
Yeah, where's the bathroom?
Yeah, especially where's the bathroom. When I went to Turkey, my sister worked in Turkey for about 8 years, and we went with my then 2-year-old daughter, who was just a pill the entire time.
And she's listening right now. What do you want to say to her?
Yes, I'll make sure she doesn't hear this. She had a wonderful time, actually, because she insisted on being dressed as Princess Jasmine much of the time. But, of course, the Turks thought that she was wearing Turkish clothing. And the Turks adore children. If you do have kids, now's the time to go to Turkey, particularly little kids. They just loved children, and they were really sweet.
That's
so the
cool.
fact that my daughter was such a pill the entire time just made it worse. But we did have a lovely time. I had done about 3 weeks of those silly tapes. You remember those Berlitz tapes?
Yeah.
And my sister said, "Oh, don't worry, everybody speaks English." No, they don't. At least none of the people I spoke to. People occasionally spoke French or German.
It was probably long enough ago that they didn't have the translator apps that they have today, because I live by my translator app when I'm overseas. I download the whatever.
That's just embarrassing.
No, it's not.
Daniel,
it's great because
it's embarrassing.
No, listen, it's great. When we were actually in Germany this Christmas, it can translate live if it has a Wi-Fi connection. So we were at dinner with our friends and their family for Christmas, and it was 3 generations of Germans. But the grandfather didn't speak a word of English, but I explained the app to him, and he signaled, and I turned it on, and then we were able to talk to each other live, and he would speak, and then it would say in English what he was saying, and then I would say something, it would say it back in German, and it was really cool. It's not perfect,
no,
but it's getting there. The Douglas Adams Babelfish is coming. I can't wait. Speaking of which, do you like Douglas Adams' work?
Yes.
Aren't all British people required to love Douglas Adams?
A lot of us. I knew someone who had gone to university with him, gone to Cambridge with him. Adams was a very interesting guy.
I actually met him once.
Very cool.
Yeah, at a book signing, and I was very fortunate to be able to ask him a question. And I said, of all the characters that you've written, which one do you think you're most actually like? And he looked up from signing, and he tilted his head, and without delay, he just goes, Slotty Bartfast. I thought that was so genius, because you think he's going to say Arthur or Ford or something, or Marvin, something like that, but it was great. I've never forgotten that. So for someone like me who's born and raised here and grew up I've never emigrated to another country, what is that experience like, and what was it like for you coming here? I mean, obviously you speak the language, so that's an
barely.
easy.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't really emigrating. I was coming here to visit the country as a tourist. Although I was working. I was working as a journalist. So I didn't feel like I was emigrating. It wasn't like
Well, how long from when you came here to work and then met Cora and got married, and how long was that whole process?
Well, I met Cora in the first week, and I never left.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I'd already met her at my parents' house in Britain.
Ah. So you knew her, and you came over, and then you guys fell in love, and then
it doesn't take long. A week.
Yeah,
it's a
couple of days if you do it right.
Yeah, I don't have commitment issues. Apparently,
I don't even know what that means. What I just said, but it just sounded funny. Well, today there's all kinds of talk about immigrants, obviously, and the problem of immigration. I want to say I don't take huge stands on things, but I think I do, and I don't realize that I do. But I think that a lot of the current administration's views on immigration are just complete and total bullshit. I think that when you look back at the United States of America, we are a nation of immigrants. And I think that the problems that they think are problems are not actually problems in the way that they say they're problems. I think that
It's not immigrants, it's racism.
yeah.
It's that simple.
Thanks. That summarizes what I was going to say a lot better. Yeah.
Because when I first got here, people said, "Well, you don't need a green card. You speak English."
Really?
Yeah, people would actually say that.
Interesting.
I mean, they were quite convinced that because I spoke English and was whitish anyway, that it was okay.
Huh. How long did it take for you to get your green card after you got married?
Immediately, because I hired a lawyer and we hired a guy called Frank Tuman. He was interned during the war. Frank Tuman was a very, very cool guy. He wrote a book called The Bamboo People, which is about the first generation of Japanese, first and second generation of Japanese Americans. And I don't know whether you know this, but the highest decorated infantry unit was the 442nd.
World War II, yeah.
In World War II. Yeah. I can't remember how many people won the Medal of Honor, but...
I think it was more than 20.
Yeah, which just shows that you need immigrants in your army.
Yes, you do. And in your country to run things and to help out. And,
you do.
So what do you think? They're building this wall, which I think is ridiculous, but I don't know if this statistic is true or not, but I was talking to someone who works in the government, and they said that as far as they're concerned, more people actually come here from Mexico legally. They'll get a visa, they'll come here for vacation, and then they just won't leave, and then they'll stay. And more people do that and cross the border by plane or bus or car than do dig under a wall. And look, I am certainly...
Daniel, let me shorten it. The wall is stupid.
Yes, it is.
The wall does not make sense unless you are some antediluvian forelock-tugging xenophobe. I mean, it is purely for show.
Yes.
It's silly.
It is to show all the Americans who
hate,
yes, that, we're doing something about this problem that they have no idea about because they don't go anywhere near the wall. And yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the same thing has happened in Britain with Brexit. It's because, there's a Polish supermarket in our town because the Polish people do all the work that we didn't want to do.
Yeah, I think people should come to Los Angeles for like 6 months and see all the incredible things that the Latin culture has done for this city. That these people are some of the hardest working.
Isn't this called Los Angeles?
It is called Los Angeles.
It's not called The Angels.
No, it's not.
It's called Los Angeles.
Yeah, and people should see how hardworking and dedicated, how family-oriented and loving of their culture and their people. I mean, the Mexicans here and
hold on. Not just Mexicans.
And I was saying, and other Latin descent. I was about to say that, yes.
I mean, and yeah.
Jeez, give a guy a chance to talk. But I was about to say, and any other Latin descent, anyone else of other Latin descended countries, these people come here, and not just Latin people either. There's Asians that are immigrants and Russians and all kinds of
people come here to work hard.
They do,
like me.
Yeah,
they come here because work in their own country is not easily available.
So how'd you get into acting? That's a good segue.
When I got married, I needed a regular job.
And you chose acting?
And acting was it. Yeah. Well, I was a writer.
Wait, congratulations. You're the only human who's ever had a regular career as an actor.
I know. People look at me as though I am slightly mad, but I was a writer at the time. I'd published my first book. And I had a couple of scripts floating around. And as you know, writers don't get paid until things get sold.
And even then, they don't get paid that well most of the time?
Well, certainly. I wasn't earning any money as a writer, or at least I was earning very little money as a writer.
And you thought, I'll earn less and go be an actor.
No. So I became an actor.
Well, in all seriousness, you have had an incredibly successful and long career in the business, which is actually not very common for actors to be working for 30 years. And so what has been some of your favorite parts of the business? What are some of your favorite jobs you've done? And do you still now today have the same love and passion for it that you did when you first started?
I actually didn't have a passion for it when I started. I knew that I didn't want to be an actor because I grew up in South London, in Wimbledon, if I'm trying to impress you, Merton, if I'm being accurate, which is about 15 minutes by train from the West End. So a lot of local stars, English stars, lived in the area. And as far as I could tell, they would turn up unshaven to pick their kids up from school, or live in the pub. And I thought, I don't want to live that life. It seems so depressing. They would work like crazy for maybe 2 months a year, and then the rest of the time they'd be unemployed and miserable. So I thought, I don't want to do that. That was my understanding of being an actor.
But then fast forward, now you're in America, you get a job. What was your first big job as an actor?
Gosh, I don't remember. I did a lot of revoicing.
Like dubbing from foreign films?
Dubbing,
and stuff?
exactly. Dubbing and adding sound, additional dialogue replacement, ADR.
That's cool.
I remember coming home, I was shooting a monster movie down in Seal Beach and turned on the TV at like 1 in the morning, and I heard this strangely familiar voice in Emmanuel 5.
Oh, wow.
and it was me playing some strange
Is this a
Arab.
Sylvia Kristel movie?
No, it was after Sylvia.
Laura
Kristel.
Gemser, one of the other famous Emmanuels.
One of the others who, tiny little person. Very sweet.
Well, speaking of cool actors, you told me offline that you had lunch with David Warner, who I think is fucking awesome.
David is indeed awesome.
And for those of you who don't know, David Warner, look him up and Google him. He's been in 2 jillion films, and he's also the bad guy in Time Bandits, which is just so good.
He's been Satan and a monster a number of times. He truly is one of my heroes, probably the best Hamlet of his generation, at least according to my parents. And the reason why Morgan Fairchild is called Morgan Fairchild.
Really?
Yeah, because he was in a movie called Morgan.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Huh. So what's he like at lunch?
It's like talking to Eeyore on Quaaludes.
Wow.
I don't have any stories. My life's just not been very interesting. No, you've got all the wonderful stories and I don't know. And then he tells just fabulous stories.
I would love to interview David Warner. So you hook that up and I will fly to England to interview David Warner. Unless he's living in Los Angeles, which case I won't.
No, I think he's living in Britain now. I wish he worked more. I mean,
yeah.
I didn't get to work with him. We just had a lot of lemon meringue pie, which happens to be his favorite.
It's actually one of my favorites.
You did ask me about movies that I've enjoyed. And
yeah. What are some of your favorite roles that you've played or shows or movies you've been in?
I was lucky enough to be in my daughter's favorite show or favorite movie throughout her life. This happened about 4 times, so that I was able to take her to the perfect movie for her age.
Which was?
There were a whole series of them, and I got cast during her birthday week, so we weren't able to celebrate her birthday, except that I was cast in Keenan and Kel, and on her birthday, I was doing that show. And she came, little girl, with her mum, and they made such a fuss of her, and it could not have been better.
That's awesome.
And then later in her life, I was in the Chipmunks movie.
That's awesome.
And I'd been in, what was the other movie?
Wait, an animated one or the live action one?
The live action one.
Oh, how fun.
Yeah, which was great fun. And I was also in a movie where I forced dogs to get married.
As you should.
As I should. I tortured monkeys, and anyway, it was like the perfect movies. Of course, who doesn't want to see somebody torturing monkeys?
Well, I don't want to see you torturing monkeys. I like monkeys.
Yeah. So I worked with chimps. Never kiss a chimp.
Why is that?
They will slip you the tongue. It's an unnerving experience.
Keeping in the vein of your career, how much has travel actually been a part of your career, just in general?
Not as much as I'd like. I always fantasized about being one of those actors that would be flown to Italy and do a movie in Cinecittà. It's fun working somewhere else. That's my real pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I've done a little bit of travel. I traveled around the US, did a lot of work in upstate New York, worked in Canada. The most fun and the craziest trip was to Sardinia in Italy.
Why is that?
I'd shot most of a Fiat commercial for the Fiat Punto. And we shot the last part of it on the beaches of Los Angeles in July. Well, if you know LA, the weather in June and July at the beach is always overcast.
Yeah, June gloom, they call it.
Yeah, June gloom. And the Italians were furious. Why didn't they know this? So they rescheduled it, and we went to Sardinia, which was madness. But I did find myself with my wife on this extraordinary white beach in Sardinia with a castle on one point and beautiful hill on the other, an azure sea, and a beautiful turquoise sky, barely a cloud. And I'm wearing a Dolce & Gabbana suit made from vintage fabric. I'm wearing Prada shoes. There's an umbrella over my head to shield me from the sun. And I'm being paid.
You're like, it doesn't get much better than this.
It does not. And I knew that it doesn't get much better. And I remember leaving the room at 4:00 in the morning to go to the set where they were setting up. And it was cold, so all I had was a blanket round my shoulders. And I looked up, and there's this canopy of stars, the Mediterranean. And I thought, I'm just an extra in some Homer story.
That's cool.
It was very cool.
Do you think you'll keep acting until you die, or do you want to retire at some point?
Probably, I think. I've done more interesting work as I've got older for less money. I was Mark Twain last week. You know, I get to be an American humor god. No, lovely production.
Can we hear your Mark Twain American accent?
Because you're not paying me.
I'll give you a scone.
Game of scones.
Let me hear 10 seconds of your American accent.
Everybody thinks that when I go home, I speak like this instead of that dumb English accent.
Not bad. That's pretty darn good. I gotta say, I think British actors tend to do American accents a lot better than Americans do British accents.
I think it depends on the original, on the actor, on the particular actor. I mean, you have Dick Van Dyke, and then you have Michael Caine. You know, neither of whom can do another accent.
And then you have Kevin Costner, who tried to do British in Robin Hood.
Yeah, we're sorry about that. Yes, damaging the British-American alliance.
But then someone like Kate Winslet, who, you know, in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, did such a just flawless American accent that you forget you're watching a British actress.
Yes, I think younger actors. Everybody is younger than me, but I think a lot of younger actors have already done so much American work in Britain. They've done so many American plays, and they've listened to so much American film, and have visited America far more than people of my generation did. That they get it right. Australian actors too, they do a fabulous job.
Yeah,
and I would say a lot of American actors do English accents very well.
Maybe you're right.
I think if it's your accent, you notice the failings more.
If you watch British television, and it doesn't matter what aspect of British television you're watching.
I don't know why you would, but okay.
You're wrong. British television is some of the most fantastic programming on the planet right now. And if you watch some of these shows, anything from Luther to whatever, it doesn't matter. The casting in Britain, they cast the best actor for the part. In Hollywood, they cast the best looking person for the part.
That's true.
And it's a shame because there are some fucking fantastic actors that don't get the kind of notoriety and work that they should because they're not quote unquote hot.
That's very true. Unfortunately, I think that Hollywood's golden era showed how casting should work because the stars were supported by...
When you say golden era, what era are you talking about?
I'm talking about the 30s through the 40s.
Okay.
I think we can agree that that's probably the golden era.
Sure.
In some ways, the silent movie era was probably the golden era. Just unbounded money. It was like, you know, rock and roll. It was just an extraordinary explosion of talent. But let's say that the 30s and 40s is the golden period of, you know, movies like Casablanca and so on and so forth.
Are you saying people were actually allowed to look human back then and have discolored teeth and look like a normal human instead of this polished,
yes, and
fake-looking person?
Directors did was they used what I call reflective acting. They would take a star who wasn't at the height of their powers, and they would use the reactions of the other actors and the performance of the other actors to heighten the performance of that star. And the example I would give is Bette Davis in The Letter. She's not at the height of her powers, and the director knows. The man playing her husband is Herbert Marshall, who only had half a leg, incidentally. He'd been wounded in the First World War. It didn't seem to stop his career. And during some of the most dramatic scenes, the director cuts from Bette Davis and concentrates on Herbert Marshall. And the emotion from him is what carries the scene.
Interesting.
It's those moments that make film so wonderful. You do actually need good actors.
I agree. And I think that a lot of the problems people complain about in modern day media when they're like, the film was okay, or that episode was okay, it's oftentimes a combination of either bad writing, bad direction, bad acting, whatever. But more often than not, when I do watch British television, I'll be honest, I am constantly blown away by how I'm completely immersed in the story. I don't think about the fact that I'm watching a show. It's a level of entertainment I feel like America should strive towards. I really do.
I do think the best of American television.
Yes, the best of American television, but not on average.
And you are watching the best of British television. The rest of it looks like bad Belgian television.
Well, I've never seen Belgian television. So.
and I don't mean to shit on the Belgians at all. Probably their best television is very good. But you look at some of the best television, Breaking Bad. Not too many pretty people in Breaking Bad. They all look like ordinary people. The Sopranos. I mean, that has to be unbelievable.
Real Housewives of Orange County.
For example.
If you were going to recommend a place in the world that you think everyone should try to see once in their life, where would it be?
Oh, I've got a really good answer for that.
Okay, exciting.
Go to the top of a mountain that is higher than anything around and stand on the top of that mountain and look around you. You don't have to be on Everest. You can be on kind of a small mountain. It's amazing.
Yes. That's a great answer.
That's my really fabulous answer.
I love it. Where's a country that you haven't been to that you'd like to go?
Oh, Japan. I would love to go to Japan.
Where would you go first in Japan?
I'd go to Tokyo, but then because I'd just want to see Tokyo. And I'd probably want to see Osaka and some of the other bigger cities. But I'd want to go into the countryside because... Yeah. I love Totoro.
Oh, so do we. We have a little thing that you hang your keys on, and if you look at it carefully, it's a big silhouette of Totoro.
Why, yes, Daniel. One of the first things I noticed. Yes, Totoro is one of the great movies of all time.
I agree.
Just absolutely. And the rest of the Miyazaki.
The whole catalog is great.
It's just pretty fabulous. And I believe it's coming out. It will be available for watching.
Do you know that you can go visit a house that's... from Totoro in Japan?
Yes, I do. And there's also the cat bus, which has to be refurred every year.
Wow.
I know.
We should just go to Japan as soon as this whole coronavirus thing settles
exactly.
down. Take a trip and...
Jolene is sleeping in the bedroom and we should just leave.
Just jet off. We're in Japan if you need us. If you didn't act, what would you do?
I've done so many other things. My life has been, sort of the wrong way round. As I said, I didn't really want to be an actor. And I did a whole bunch of other things. So I wanted to be a director.
Well, you've said that a couple of times, and I want to clarify. You don't look at your career now and go, oh, it's okay. I mean, you like being an actor now, don't you?
I do. And I love acting. But most of my career has been auditioning and worrying that I'm not auditioning.
So you're a professional worrier.
And then when I'm acting, yes, it's fabulous, What
was it like being on Friends, by the way?
Very odd. I only met 2 of the cast members. I think that Bruce Willis was shooting something at the same time as that episode, so everybody was concentrating on him. I think that there were problems with the cast at the time. I don't know. Everybody was lovely, and Phoebe's charming. She's hilarious and wonderful. Her husband's French, so we chatted about that. It was fun, but it was very much a baptism of fire. They shot it a couple of times, and then thank you very much, good night.
I have a great friend story, actually.
Do tell.
I just moved to California 20 years ago, and I got a temp job working at the Warner Brothers lot in the IT division of the Warner Brothers Video Distribution Department. There's a woman on pregnancy leave, and I was covering for her while she was out. So I've been in California now for just a matter of weeks. I haven't really done the celebrity thing or anything like that. and I'm at this job, and they say, hey, as part of one of the perks of being here as an employee, you can walk the lot and go there for lunch and walk around. You have your little pass. Okay, great. So, I've never been on a big studio lot before. I'm going to go check this out.
And Warner Brothers is very cool.
It is very cool. Yeah. Matter of fact, for you listeners out there, if you come to Los Angeles, do the Warner Brothers VIP studio tour. It's really cool. So yet another free plug I'm not paid for. So I get onto the lot at lunch and I show my little badge and I walk on and I'm like, oh, this is really cool. This is so neat. And then I walk by a trailer and there is Bo Derek sitting there on the cell phone talking to somebody. And I'm like, oh my God, that's Bo Derek. I saw a celebrity. This is crazy. And then I go around another corner as I'm trying to find the cafe and they were shooting The West Wing. So there's Moira Kelly and Martin Sheen sitting there talking about their scene, and they look up at me and I wave and they wave. And I'm like, this is crazy. I saw 3 celebrities. And then I'm completely in a daze walking around and I hear, "Meow!" And someone's golf cart almost runs me down. And it's Phoebe and Joey from Friends. And so they wave sorry that they weren't paying attention and almost killed me. And then I go into the cafe and I have lunch and I run home and call my mom and tell her that I almost got run down by Phoebe and Joey from Friends. It's my exciting Friends story.
Well, it was a fun set.
Yeah.
There was a lot of security because it was such a big show. Not as much as Seinfeld. I did one of the last 3 of Seinfeld, and that was crazy. That was nuts. And Jerry Seinfeld is a prince.
Really?
Yeah. We had fabulous food, which we all care about, and he had a 12-piece band, I think, and he waited till the end of the show and he introduced every single cast member.
That's cool.
And I was picking a shrimp out of the buffet because I thought I better. And this voice behind me went, "You are doing so well." And I realized that it was that really scary guy from Fargo who puts the other person in the chipper.
Oh, jeez.
I'm like, oh, my God. Who apparently was a very good Hamlet.
So besides acting and family, because those are off the table for this question, what are you most passionate about in life?
I've got to say baking,
Okay.
beer, and bicycles.
The 3 Bs.
The 3 Bs.
Okay.
Particularly baking. I love bread.
Now, do you ever bake with beer while you're on a bicycle?
Not on a bicycle, but I have baked.
Okay.
And my bicycle is a Brompton, not a B. Which is a big deal in the bicycle world.
What's your all-time favorite thing to bake?
It's got to be a sourdough bread called a miche. That's the most fun. That was the first time when I got caught by the magic of baking. We'd been in Paris. I'd been to Poilan, and I'd had Poilan's bread. And I got home, and there was a book which we'd used in Paris, and you build a sourdough, and then you make the bread, and then you put it in the oven, and I followed all the steps. And when I took the bread out of the oven, I looked around to see if somebody had slipped a Poilan bread in my oven.
Oh, cool.
I could not believe that I could do that. And the extraordinary thing about baking for me is how many people love bread and what a strong connection they have with bread. And unfortunately, how opinionated, or not unfortunately, but how opinionated they are.
I'm going to go ahead and say I think most people love the smell of fresh baked bread.
It's true.
I enjoy a good sourdough, but it is not my favorite bread.
What is your favorite bread, Danny?
Thank you for asking, Oliver. My favorite bread would either be one of two. There's 2 in the top tied position.
Oh, okay.
It's either going to be an incredibly delicious, crusty Italian or French loaf, just a standard, white bread with a good crust on it.
Right, which may actually be a sourdough.
Could be. Or something with raisins and nuts, like a pecan raisin, whatever. Walnut raisin, absolutely.
Hazelnut currant.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, they work
you
really
guys
well
call,
in a sourdough.
Raisins are sultanas, is that right?
Sultanas are a specific kind of raisin.
Ah, okay. Have you ever had a challah bread with golden raisins in it?
Why you call it a challah bread? It's just a challah. It's like calling it a bread. It's called, or a baguette bread.
You'd think as a Jew I would know this.
Yeah,
but,
exactly. It's just a challah. Yes, and I have some really lovely recipes for challah, and I love doing that sort of turban shape for the for the new year. And I do a stuffed challah.
They call that a braid.
No, it's not a braid. It's like a turban.
Oh, the round one.
The round one.
Oh.
This man is so ignorant. I don't know
God,
why you're
I think
listening.
I might have just lost my license to bread. I was thinking of the braid. Sorry.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it is bread. And the
But
crazy
the round.
thing.
You're talking about the round.
Yeah, the round one. It looks like a turban.
It actually
or
does
a
kind of look like
snake.
a turban. Yeah, either one.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of all this baking and delicious foodness, we have this friendly war of scones. And
Yes,
I
indeed.
want to go on record as saying that the reason that we have a war is that Oliver is a traditionalist about scones, and I am a revolutionary about scones. I make my scones with
An
buttermilk.
apostate. We're going to go with apostate.
I make my scones with 5 or 6 different kinds of mixed fruit, including mango and
I am
raisin
crying.
and buttermilk, and they are soft and delicious and moist and incredible. And he's more of a person who I think would say that's abysmal.
Well, I wouldn't say it's abysmal, but it's not a scone.
It is a scone.
No, it's not. Yeah, that's the problem with Americans. I mean, you want to call all sparkling wine champagne. Champagne comes from the Champagne region. It doesn't come from anywhere else.
All right, England, let's take a vote. People in England listening to this podcast, you should email me and cast a vote. Is what I make a scone? If it's from it's actually from my recipe base is Delia. You know, Delia Bakes. It's her scone recipe modified so she's a British woman making British scones, and
One of my brother's pin-ups. It's very true. Delia is one of my brother's favorite. My brother's a great baker too. One of my brother's favorite cookery book authors.
Oh, wait, I want to get back to my voting thing here. I think that anyone who lives in England or the UK should
Daniel.
email in.
We've just had one of the stupidest votes of all time from English people. And I want to point out that Scots, of whom I am actually one, did not participate in that particular stupid decision. Anyway.
That's true. You are a country that voted to leave the EU, so maybe England doesn't matter in this equation. But I'm going to give them credit and say that people in England are smart enough to know what a scone is.
There are scones are a pretty big family. Joking apart, which will really make us popular with a really boring podcast. I mean, you can have potato scones, also known as farls, I think.
I'll probably just edit this part out.
Just cut this bit out.
I'll summarize the whole conversation and say, I believe what I make is a scone. You believe it's not. We should put both of our recipes up online and then let the UK decide.
But my recipe is from Richard Bertinet, who is a Frenchman from Brittany, and he came to Britain and he needed to make scones and he developed his own recipe. Daniel's sleeping.
My scone is a scone.
They are amazing, and they're made with cream and currants.
I do love currant scones.
Yeah.
What's one of your favorite books of all time? You're sitting around on a Sunday and you just want to read a book that you really, truly love. What would it be?
Oh, that's an incredible question.
I don't ask dumb questions.
It's a dumb question. I think it would have to be Treasure Island.
I think you're
Because it
lying.
is-
I think you're lying, and I'll tell you why. I think that your favorite book is the Daniel Sherrill Encyclopedia of Mixed Fruit Scones.
You know that's not true. Because no scone has mixed fruit in it.
So, Robert Louis Stevenson, Treasure Island.
Yeah, there's a lovely little museum in Edinburgh dedicated to Walter Scott, Robert Louis Stevenson, and Robert Burns. Right by the castle. I recommend it. It's a lovely little museum.
Well, I also love that book, by the way. That was one of my favorite
It's a
books as a
perfect
kid.
book.
It really is. I agree.
There are some things that are perfect in life. I would say The Maltese Falcon is a perfect film. And anyone who disagrees with me is simply wrong. Like people who call scones those things with mixed fruit.
And I was going to crack a joke, but I don't think my scones are perfect. I think they're delicious. I don't think they're perfect.
Well, luckily mine are. I mean, one of the great things about baking is you have a certain amount of control. And you can bake it until it's perfect. But for you, I mean, your scones may be exactly what you want.
They're not. They're close. There's some things we can talk about offline, but I
Well,
want to
if you
improve
took
the
out all those
recipe.
mixed fruits, it would be...
I'm flipping Oliver off right now. What's the first movie you saw that made you cry?
The movie, I'm embarrassed to say this, the movie which I wept through was La Vie en Rose, the the Edith Piaf movie.
I haven't seen it.
I was beginning to tear up, and there's a scene where she thinks her lover has come back to see her, and he's actually been killed in a plane crash. And I just started weeping. I used up my handkerchief. I was weeping so much that my entire shirt front was wet. And my wife was looking at me like, my wife cries at commercials. And she was like, but this is too sad. But it's Piaf, you know? And I cried until the end of the movie.
Oh, wow.
And when I left, half the audience, all the French-speaking people, were just weeping. We were standing weeping. And all the English-speaking people were like, all right, so it's sad, so what? We're all like, but it's Piaf.
I love when you find a movie that just completely catches you off guard. For me, there's a 1996 German movie called Beyond Silence, and it's a short version without any major spoilers. It's a story of a young woman whose both of her parents are deaf, and her aunt, who is not, gives her a clarinet for her birthday, and it's about a lot of things, but the core of it is really this young girl's passion for music and her struggle to communicate that and be understood by two deaf parents. And anyway, it's just a phenomenal movie. I highly recommend.
I have to see that. I went to see Amy with my daughter, and she held it to the credits and then just went.
Yeah.
And it's a heartbreaking movie. It's just an indictment of fame. Fame is a flame that burns so brightly and can really hurt you. And I've been lucky enough to be sort of moderately notorious, a little bit of renown.
I think what's truly great about what you do is that you've had a 30-year career in Hollywood. You've done all these films and movies and TV shows and all this excellent work, but you can still walk into the grocery store and most people don't know who you are. They might hear your voice and go, is Michael Caine here?
Or as my mother once said when I was working with an older actor, she said, oh, darling, you're working with a real actor.
Wow.
That's my mother, the woman who didn't recognize me throughout an entire play.
Well, something I really want to ask you about, actually.
Sure.
So you're in your early 60s, and I was curious because
Well, don't say it like that. That sounds so much worse than just saying I'm 62. You know what I could do? I could say, I'm 85. And you go, oh my God, you look fabulous. I've looked this age since I was 12. I have never, ever been young. Ever. I've never played like young roles. It's just never happened. I finally looked the age that I was I was 12.
I'm just laughing because when I was 14, the kids in high school were asking me to buy beer for them because I looked older most of my life.
Oh, I've never been carded.
That's so funny.
And I've been drinking in bars since I was 12.
I got carded 3 days ago.
Really?
Going into just a pub or a restaurant with some friends. It's one of those like they have to card everybody. But
my wife was carded well into her 40s, and they just look at me and go, no, thank you, sir. You can go there. Like, really?
Yeah, you look older than dirt. It's fine.
Yeah. My brother, who's bigger than me, is blonde and baby-faced and was carded well into his 20s. He's a giant, and it's just embarrassing.
Well, so I was just going to ask you, as you look back on your life, and you're 62 now, and you've had this incredible career, you've done a bunch of other really cool stuff I know about. How have your priorities changed, both as a human and as a man, between 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s? How have things shifted for you over the decades?
I don't know that they have that much.
Well, okay.
Sorry to have such a negative answer because it sort of shuts off discussion, but
no, not at all. I mean, I guess I should have asked: have your priorities changed? When you look back on 22-year-old Oliver versus 62-year-old Oliver 40 years ago,
yeah,
did you want the same things at 22 that you want at 62, or have you achieved enough things that you're like, I'm cool?
No, I think I have the same kind of hunger that I had when I was 22. I don't have quite the same level of anger that I had then. Sort of unexplained to myself at that point, anger, although perfectly justifiable, I think. But I'm the same person, I think, when it comes to directing, performing. I have the same hunger to do it well.
So do you believe that people actually change, or do we just become hopefully the more mature and evolved version of the same person we always were?
No, I think we become more of whatever we were. And you can certainly see that in my parents. My father is just more of whatever he was. You know, the man who taught us to make Molotov cocktails at 15.
Wow.
You know.
I think it's very interesting because I realized after my dad died, I was painfully aware of the fact that I think we as people, especially as we get older and we start to experience some trauma and things like that and loss and all those things, I personally realize that I agree with you. I think we become much more of who we actually really are. So if you're just kind of a dick in the world, you're going to become a much bigger dick when you get older. And if you're a nice person, you're going to become an even nicer person as you get older. That's been my experience of what I've personally seen. Other people might disagree.
I think if you do your inner work, as one of my friends on the program says, you can change. You can change in a positive way. But if you don't, then you're going to end up with all the problems that you had earlier in life because they're unresolved.
Agreed.
And it doesn't matter how much you drink or how many drugs you take. What you're basically doing is shutting the doors to the room where the demons are playing poker, and the demons just open the door again.
So how would you, in keeping with the analogy, how do you believe people should access those doors and deal with those demons?
By drinking a lot and taking drugs. No, I think you need to work through it, and it depends on who you are. I mean, some people do it with meditation, some people do it with talk therapy, some people do it by
journaling.
I mean, you do have to look into yourself, as painful as it is. You know, I grew up with loss because my grandfather was killed in 1944, but that was the shadow over my grandmother's life and my mother's life, and my mother had never really dealt with it. And it wasn't until one of my sister's boyfriends committed suicide and my mother came to visit her that all that trauma came out for my mother, and my poor sister, who should have been the one being supported, had to be supportive of my mother.
That's tough.
And that was, hard. It was, over 50 years before. But on a brighter note, where do we come back from that?
One of the things that I think is really great about being an actor and having friends that are actors is that actors who are serious about their craft, they do what we call the work, which is this phrase we use to kind of summarize this soul level, deep reaching inside to figure out what life's about, who you are, where you come from.
Oh, Daniel, would that were true.
No, the actors I know really do this. I'm not saying they all do, but I'm saying that more than some of the people I know who just work in an average job, let's say, actors who are serious about the work, they confront these things and they try to deal with them a little more than, let's say, the average bear, right? And so, unfortunately, you have also a whole set of crazy that comes along with the artist
You
mind.
are undermining your argument.
I am,
at this point.
but there's something to be said for a conversation with people who are trying to access all these things. And it's if you can find a way to do that without the crazy, I think that's the key.
Yes, I think that's true, although people are drawn to the crazy.
Yep. Like moths to the flame.
Like moths to the flame. And people like Judy Garland, for example, is a good example, or Edith Piaf, people who lead lives with, appalling trauma, are very attractive. I don't know how to put it in a cleaner way. I find that very painful to look at with Judy Garland. Of course, Edith Piaf I worship.
If you could tell your younger self anything, go back in time right now and look at 22-year-old Oliver, what would you say?
Shut the fuck up.
Wait, me or young Oliver?
Young Oliver. I don't know. I think be less serious. Be less serious. Be less driven. Be more open. I have been incredibly lucky that through a series of mistakes and missteps, I have been forced to be open and forced to experience things that I never thought I wanted to do. So I've done an awful lot of things that I never in my wildest dreams thought that I'd be doing. Jobs that I never thought I wanted to do. I was a delivery driver for a period of my life. I
was a bulk food store clerk, a McDonald's manager. Yeah. I was a personal maid. I get you.
I know. I've done cleaning.
Yeah,
I've
you
done
end up in all these weird jobs. You're like, how the
a
fuck
lot
did
of
I get here?
construction and so on.
Yeah, I did construction as well. Yeah. But don't you think that's part of the artist's life on some level, that you end up having all these random jobs to try and make ends meet, and you're exploring things and you're kind of going where the road takes you a little bit?
The sad thing is people are not proud of that.
I think they should be. I mean,
I have a couple of friends who are actors, very good actors, and I direct them a lot when I get to cast plays. And one of them, they're both in construction, and one of them is very proud of the fact that he's in construction, and the other won't really talk about it. I did so many jobs before I became an actor. I did them. Yeah. I'm proud of having done them. It doesn't make me a lesser person. And quite a lot of people have to do more than one job these days.
Absolutely, yeah. You do what you got to do to survive, man.
And certainly when I met my friend Joaquin Garrido, who is an actor in Mexico City, he said he was one of the few actors who supported himself entirely by acting. And most people owned a restaurant or they had another gig. And I can tell you that a lot of English actors have to temp.
Yeah, a lot of American actors, same thing.
Yeah, after they finished their job at the Royal Shakespeare Company.
We were just talking last night, actually, about the fact that there is still a substantial number of actors here in LA that you will see recurring on a TV show, and they're a barista at a coffee shop on the weekends.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't pay what it used to, and the business has changed, and it's not. And look, I will say one facet, having spent so many years out here and seen the business from the inside as well, and the behind camera and the production, and I worked at Capitol Records and blah, blah, blah. I do want to say that the one ugly truth people don't talk about is that a lot of people in this business, number one, do not know how to manage money, and two, they live well beyond their means. You know, they'll get a job as a.
And you don't think that's true of the majority of Americans?
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. But I'm saying, when people wonder, like, how did that guy get on Law and Order for 12 episodes and now he's a barista at Coffee Bean? Well, because he got one recurring role and then bought a house and a car and took a vacation to Europe, and like he blew his money, you know? So it's...
Well, because you get sold the Cinderella dream.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, we've talked a little bit about, and here's a dangerous topic, we've talked a little bit about acting and teaching acting. I don't want to do that because I don't want to sell the Cinderella dream. Because you're not going to be a star.
You don't have to, though. My first acting class I ever took was in college, actually. And my professor sat us down the first day, and she looked at us and she said, I'm going to tell you right now that there's 26 students in this class, and if you are all extremely lucky, one of you might find success in this business, but the rest of you likely won't. So if there's anything else you want to do in life, anything that you feel driven to, go do it, because the life of trying to be an actor is an extremely difficult one.
No, it's horrible. Being an actor is horrible. Acting is lovely.
Yeah.
Being an actor is extremely unpleasant.
Maybe extremely unpleasant until you find great success at it.
It's not shucking steel.
Yeah,
it's not putting
I've done some pretty shitty jobs, Oliver.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's not what you think it is, because all these movies you see where the kid makes it, really? It just doesn't happen that often. And a lot of people have already been marked as stars from an early age.
Yeah, but let's swing it to the positive. Also...
Oh, why?
I forgot I'm talking to...
We've been doing so well.
I forgot I'm talking to a Brit. No, I think swinging it to the positive, though, The fact is, if you're artistically driven and you're passionate about what you do and you love what you do, then it's not as horrible as we're making it sound, because you're still doing something you love.
As long as you are acting, you are an actor, whether you're being paid or not. If you want to be an actor, act.
Yes, a writer writes, an actor acts.
And a writer writes. If you're not writing, you're not a writer. Yeah. I mean, that's certainly when I was...
You see that meme? It says, if you say you're a writer and you're not writing, you're not a writer, you're a dreamer.
I have a dream crusher in my car.
What is that?
It's not a dream catcher. It's a dream crusher. And I think more people should have them. I think dreams are incredibly destructive. There's a wonderful cartoon.
I can't disagree with you more.
Not only are you wrong about scones, but dreams. There's a wonderful cartoon I like where one character is saying to the other, never give up on your stupid, stupid dreams. I just love that.
Wow, that's funny. Well, hey, world who is listening to this podcast, hopefully.
Yeah, both the people who are listening. One of them is not my mother because there's a rerun of Frasier on.
Don't listen to Oliver. Your dreams are important, and so are you. I'll just leave it at that.
You are worthless. I did actually once write a book called Negative Affirmations. For example, I am a weed in the garden of life.
I love these inspirational meetings we have.
Yes, they bring you up.
Where is your favorite place you've ever eaten in the world? And you can't say your own kitchen. That's not allowed.
First meal I ever had that was truly amazing and made me think about food was in Paris. And my grandmother took me to the house of, I assumed, one of her friends. And in those days, not many French people spoke English, but this woman and her husband did. And she said, "Do you know why you're here?" And I said, "Well, I thought you were a friend of my grandmother's." And she said, "No, I was actually a friend of your great-grandmother."
Oh, wow.
Because she saved my life in the war. My husband and I are Jewish. My husband was in a POW camp in Germany, but I was here in Paris, and your great-grandmother brought me food and made sure that I was hidden. And that's why you're here. And the food was amazing.
Wow.
It was just like a perfect French meal.
Yeah. Do you remember what you had?
I remember it was spinach with cream and sherry.
Oh, nice.
And I hated spinach as a child because, vegetables in England in those days were cooked till they were grey. And this was just a revelation, and the rest of the food was fabulous too. So that was what sort of made me think about food in a different way. I was just so lucky. I grew up with fabulous food in a country where the food was terrible.
Do you have a security blanket item that you take with you whenever you travel, no matter what?
Yes. Oh, you want me to tell you what it is?
Well, what is it?
It's my friend Tigger.
A stuffed animal.
Yes.
Awesome.
But more than a stuffed animal. Tigger was an Air Force mascot in the Second World War.
Tigger from Winnie the Pooh Tigger?
I guess so, yes.
Okay.
I think he was a souvenir from a restaurant in England, much loved. And eventually, when I was about 4, I was allowed to take him home. He lived at my grandmother's. And he's been with me ever since.
Oh, how big is he?
He's tiger size, At the moment, he looks more like a leopard, but he's spotted. So he looks more like a jaguar or a leopard, I suppose, proving, of course, that a tiger can change his spots.
Oliver, what does success in life overall look like to you?
Sitting here with you, Daniel.
Good answer. All right, done and done.
But being asked about myself, I mean, what more success could you want?
No, but really, if you were to tell, if someone young was, some 18-year-old came up to you and was like, "Hey, what is life all about? What is success in life, and what's the reason, and what do you think in your experience?"
It's being able to enjoy the moment, which for me would be Saturday morning in a pub with a pint of beer, not a cold pint of beer, the correct temperature.
Room temperature, right?
Yes, that's correct. But of course, it's the room temperature in my parents' house, which is gelid.
Now, is this by yourself or with
Generally
Cora?
by myself. It's one of those moments where you're alone but not lonely. And you are
great.
completely okay with the world.
Would you encourage people to travel in their life?
I think it should be mandatory.
I agree.
There are so many people I know who have not traveled. I remember being driven into New York, into Manhattan, by a kid I had a job in north of the city, by the Tappan Zee. And this kid was driving me in I was doing a radio job. And we got to the tip of Manhattan, and he said, "Can you tell me the way?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, I've never been to Manhattan." I went,
Wow.
"But where are you from?" He said, "Well, I'm from where I picked you up. I've never been into the city." He was 20.
That's crazy.
And I met people in London who grew up in the south of London who'd never really been into the centre of London.
Look, I know lots of people from small town, middle America that have never left their zip code ever, never been on a plane.
Daniel, there are people here in Los Angeles, I know we've had this conversation, who
They've
have never
been to
taken the
beach.
bus.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
they've
trying
never
to think.
been outside their
Well, wait, in all
comfort zone.
fairness, I've taken buses all over the world. I have not ever been on a bus in L.A.
We're going to do that.
What's your spirit animal?
Well, I have one. It's Tigger. I already told you that.
Okay.
I actually have a spirit animal who is with me much of the time. I should have brought Tigger today.
You should have. We should do a picture of you and Tigger, and I'll put it on your podcast, on your promotion.
Well, you should interview Tigger. He's probably more interesting than me.
Probably. He'll probably like my fucking scones.
No, he's very conservative.
So do you have an actual separate spirit animal or no?
I don't really. I don't think. I mean, I do love cats.
Okay. Of all shapes and sizes, or specific, like, house cats or
of all shapes and sizes.
Big cats?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and certainly big cats are amazing. But I don't know whether you've ever seen a slowed down film of a house cat walking, because they walk exactly like a tiger. I have a very, very small black cat who's like Kate Moss with the light flocking of fur. And she walks like she's a panther.
That's cool.
She maybe weighs like 8 ounces.
So overall, because you've traveled so much in your life, are there any quick tidbits or travel tips that you think are important for people to know?
Yeah, I've got a couple. One is, if you can afford a guide, get one.
A personal guide, not a digital notebook.
Guide. Yeah. Certainly take a guidebook. And if you can get a guidebook that's written by local people, and I've got one here that I brought to show you called The Local's Guide to Edinburgh, for example.
Yeah.
That's great. And the other thing is that if you have a particular passion, like I think you have photography and I have baking, why not focus on that particular passion? It gives you kind of a spine to your trip rather than just walking around and going to the Louvre and the Eiffel Tower and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, so like in your case, you're going to be in France. Maybe there's a baking class on something you've never made before, or there's a chance to tour, or in my case,
just go to a bakery and buy a bun. I mean, it's that simple. Or for you, go to a photography shop,
sure,
and look at what they're selling,
which I have done many times.
Yeah.
I've even gone to
a hardware store,
or camera museums, or things like that.
That kind of thing. So my wife is.
I guess we could summarize that by saying, pursue your passions, especially when you're traveling, to see how other people in the world.
That is an excellent way of saying it. Have you thought of doing a podcast?
Well, Oliver, before we say goodbye,
Yes,
I like to close every episode with a little game called 299 Philosophical and Life Questions with Moonbird. You don't have to answer them all. Don't worry. You only have to answer 2. So give me 2 numbers between 1 and 299, and I will read you those 2 questions.
I'm going to do the funny number, which is 23.
Okay.
And I'm going to do the boring number, which is 45.
23 and 45. 23, are you more into looks or brains?
Got to go with brains.
Okay.
Because everybody's beautiful, Daniel.
That is not true.
You're a horrible person.
No, I'm just kidding. Everyone is beautiful.
No, definitely. Brains are really, brains to me, that's sexy. I mean, certainly because, living in Hollywood, you see a lot of really beautiful people.
Are they, though? Or are they beautiful by Botox and other things?
That's just scary. The duck lip, you mean? And the devil eyebrows? Is that what you're talking about?
It's gross.
I know it is.
Yes. 45 was your other one?
Yes, sir.
What's on your bucket list this year for 2020?
My bucket list this year for 2020. Oh, I would love to go to Japan. I don't think it's going to happen this year, but I would. I mentioned that Japan would be a place that I want to go, and partly because my daughter would love to go and my wife would love to go, and we all want to go for different reasons.
How cool. That'd be a great trip.
That's really cool. And that's the other thing I would say. If you are traveling with someone, and I know people have a perfectly fun time traveling alone. I have a good friend who travels alone every year. She's a travel agent. She travels alone every year and she has a wonderful time. But if you are traveling with someone else, it's great because you see the world twice. You can see the world through their eyes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they will see things that you don't.
Mm-hmm. That's one of the main reasons Joe and I love to travel together, besides all the obvious things, is she will find things that I never even knew existed.
Exactly.
She found in Portland, actually, she knows I love tea. Well, we both love tea, actually. But she found a Airbnb excursion to the Smith Tea Maker, where you got to go and sit down and they teach you all about the history of tea, and then you smell and taste all these different kinds of tea, and then you brew, you make your own blend. And I left there with one of the finest tasting teas I've ever made, ever had.
That's the kind of thing that it's just a dream to do when you're traveling. And I would have to say it doesn't cost you very much.
No.
If you've already spent the money for the ticket, do something fun like that.
Yes. I tell people all the time, if you're going to take a big trip, let's say you're going overseas,
right,
and you're spending at least a couple $1,000s to go there, and there's an excursion, like in our case, when we were in New Zealand, we'd already spent a couple grand getting there and everything. Well, the plane tickets were free because of frequent flyer miles, but we'd still spend.
Oh, show off.
We still, good planning, people. But we still burned some money from some of the stuff we wanted to do. But we found a friend of ours had said, you have to take this helicopter ride. They do this thing where they take you to the top of a glacier. It's absolutely incredible. And I'd actually always wanted to stand on a glacier. I thought that would be so awesome. So we did. And I think it was about $250 a person. So it was $500 total. But we took this helicopter ride for 35, 40 minutes up to the top of a glacier, got to hang out on a glacier for a half hour, and then turned around and took a ride back. And I got to tell you, one of the all-time highlights of my life. And I paid the $500 off later when I got home and I worked. The money will come, you'll pay it off, but the chance to have these experiences while you're there, definitely once in a lifetime stuff. You should do it.
I agree. It's well worth going into hideous debt for fun things.
Unless you're filthy rich, in which case this podcast probably doesn't really apply to you.
No, I would say not. And I think one of the problems with being filthy rich is that you don't value those things because that $500 was hard won.
Yeah. Well, see, the key is to live a life where you struggle.
How many floors did you have to sweep and mop?
I don't even want to talk about it.
Okay.
I think the key is to grow up, to not have a lot of money and struggle and, have all those.
You know what the truth is?
What's that?
It's from Picasso. I want to be a poor man with money.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is to have the perspective of not having a lot and then come into money later in life and be able to go do all the things, but appreciate it. That's to me, that's the answer.
If I find money in the sofa cushions, it's a good day.
And that's where our original episode ended, but I reached out to Oliver for a quick follow-up over Zoom. Oliver, welcome back. How are you?
It's a pleasure to be back. There's a few things that have happened since we last spoke.
Just a few.
Yeah.
Well, obviously a lot has changed since we last spoke. I'm just curious, overall, how has the pandemic been for you so far? It's been, 5 months?
Yeah. I mean, that's the odd thing about time. It kind of stretches. Time is fungible right now.
Ooh, fungible. Scrabble word.
Yes. I've started to do crosswords. That's how bored I have become.
So overall, though, what's been something good for the pandemic for you?
Well, I've done a few things that I wanted to do for a while, like build a giant paper skeleton, a model of the Hollywood Bowl. I've been, of course, improving my already perfect scone recipe.
Oh, so much, huh? Yeah.
Just really what I normally do. What's been interesting outside in the world, because there's less pollution and we were lucky enough to have some lovely rain this year, people's gardens are just spectacular.
Yeah.
Been some amazing sightings of wildlife. So that's a pleasure. And until this last week, you could actually go outside and smell the roses as opposed to the gasoline.
And in Los Angeles, until this last week, you could actually drive somewhere in 10 minutes like you used to be able to 20 years ago when I first moved here.
Oh, you're just too old.
It is crazy to me how fast the traffic picked up again,
It is. It's funny. There's a certain number, I'm sure that a mathematician could tell me this, where there's a kind of a tipping point where you in the first week of the pandemic, when everything was shut down, you'd be the one car on the freeway and it'd be kind of scary. Then there'd be like 2 or 3 cars, and then there'd be a few cars, and you could still drive at whatever speed you particularly desired. Then there were more cars, and you thought it's getting back to what we used to call normal. By the way, I hope it doesn't get back to normal.
Yeah.
I didn't like normal. I think weird is... I'm hoping that we'll move into weird and that weird will be better.
The new weird.
The new weird.
Well, I know during the podcast you had mentioned that Japan was on your bucket list, and obviously that changed at least temporarily. Is that still something you're looking at for this year if possible, or next year?
No, I don't think this year. I mean, if I went on my own, it would be fine, but I was planning on going with my wife and possibly my daughter, and I don't think they would want to sit in a metal tube wearing a face mask and a face shield, which apparently they now...
And a hazmat suit.
Yeah, and a hazmat suit.
So for the people listening, we are recording this the night before it's going to air. And, right now, Los Angeles and several areas of the country are spiking cases like crazy. How do you feel about the general look of things towards the future? And what are your predictions about what's going to happen with COVID in our country?
I don't think anybody knows. And although I have played smarter characters on television, I can assure you that I'm not that smart, and my crystal ball is really cloudy. The general public, I think, has been given so much conflicting information that they probably don't really know what's going on. And although I think people are foolish for not wearing face masks, I can kind of understand that they've been told to wear them, then told that it wasn't a good idea, and then told that they
I
had...
agree. I think, I really think that this whole thing could have been handled better. And I feel that I agree with you that the information being disseminated is not coherent. It's not a cogent narrative. It's not presented in a way that's definitive. And I think that the people at the head of the table should be making better decisions on behalf of the people and just make some tougher calls. But, it'll be interesting because, years from now, if people listen back to this episode, they'll know what the outcome was. And we're sitting here now living it, playing dice, wondering what's really going to happen. I think we should both make a prediction for, January 1, 2021. Where do we both think we're going to be? You first.
I think I will be sitting wearing a jacket in my garden with a glass of alcohol. That's what I think. And I'm not going to go so far as to decide what alcohol at this stage. Don't even try and pin me down.
I think in January, I will be sitting at home, eating good food that I have made and recording another podcast. But that is actually not what I meant. I meant let's each make a prediction about the United States and about the world. Where do you think we're going to be come January?
Far be it from me to be optimistic in this negative time, because normally I'm so negative. I think if they tested me for coronavirus, I would just turn up so negative that it would be off the charts. Maybe I'm just a contrary person, but I do see, I see on a human level the things changing in a positive direction. On a larger political level, I'm not quite so happy. What has been surprising is the outbreaks of kindness that I have witnessed. I mean, normally when you'd see a movie about a pandemic, everybody's running through the streets, shooting people, or possibly cutting their heads off because they're zombies. And so far in the San Fernando Valley, I haven't seen too much of that. Although further north, you don't know. Valencia, there could be like overrun with zombies. I'm not sure. I will say that on 4th of July, I look out over the San Fernando Valley, which is a lovely view. It looked like a small war was going on. I don't know what it is with like fireworks. We've had fireworks for a month. I have friends from Beirut who said it wasn't that bad at the height of the war.
My prediction for January 2021 is that Donald Trump will not win the election, that we'll have a new president. I believe that the coronavirus will have a vaccine, or at least very close to having a vaccine, and that by that time, so many people will have been infected anyway that we will be moving towards herd immunity and that people are going to generally be a bit happier come January.
And then Daniel woke up.
I am actually a very optimistic person, so I'm gonna err on the side of human beings.
I'm certainly erring on the side of human beings.
While we're talking about the world, let's address the matter of George Floyd and all of the racial awareness and protest that's come up. I'm curious because you're from Britain originally, and I know you've been here for quite a while, and you're a U.S. citizen and everything, but coming from another country, what is your perspective, and being 62, what is your perspective on systemic racism and what's happened and the awareness, and how do you feel about the future?
Well, given that I'm a white immigrant, I don't have any African ancestry. I don't know whether I'm the one to be talking about it. And without trying to be glib about it, I want to point out the Civil War was fought by a group of traitors who then lost. They lost. And it was about slavery. It wasn't about states' rights. It was about states' rights to have slavery. So the fact that it's been commemorated almost as a victory for this length of time is ridiculous. And my grandfather had a real thing about slavery, and was appalled at the number of statues in Britain commemorating slave owners. And I want to point out that the British government paid money to slave owners in compensation, not to slaves, to slave owners in compensation when slavery was declared illegal. I mean, we can talk about the American War of Independence, and I can be slightly more humorous about that by saying that I'm always crying in a corner during the July the 4th because I should be governor of California as a British,
or governor of the United States.
Also, possibly, yes, Governor General of the United States. That should be me. That's my job. And we'd be all happy. We'd be so much happier. There wouldn't be any slavery, and everybody would be doing what I say.
But getting back to the idea of white privilege, and the reason I asked you is because you are a 60-year-old white man who's been around longer than me, and you have a little more perspective on the world. You're so much closer to death than I am.
Thanks, Daniel.
Please hold for plane. So you, as a 60-year-old white man who's from Britain and has been around the world longer than I, et cetera, how do you feel about the awareness and the protests and the feeling of the country now to say enough's enough?
Well, major change has already happened in people's minds. I mean, you know that this Black Lives Matter movement is the largest protest movement in the history of the United States. And that has to sink in with people. And you see many people of all colors standing up for Black Lives Matter. And around the world, that resonates with people, not only in countries like England that was involved in the slave trade or France, but in other places. It's lit a fire, which I don't think you can put out. And we've seen a number of changes, these statues which have been pulled down. And really, why not? Why not pull them down? I mean, partly because are they good art? No. Put up something new. I mean, let's put up an African-American woman. Let's put up Sojourner Truth.
Well, I read an article today that Thomas Jefferson's descendant, one of them, has said, let's get rid of the Jefferson Memorial and make it a memorial to Harriet Tubman.
Well, the other thing is, why don't we talk about it? The English Prime Minister, who is a complete idiot, sorry to be political, said you can't rewrite history. We rewrite history all the time. That's the point of it. We discover new things about the past that change our views of the past. We should rewrite history, and we should memorialize different aspects of it, and we should forget about different aspects of it. That's all I have to say. I don't have anything. George Floyd's murder, it was so obvious to people that this was a human being being murdered.
Yeah, a friend of mine who's a reporter said that America just witnessed its first live lynching on television.
That's right. Yeah. And that's what I think stuck with people, that here is a human being being murdered.
It's gross.
Yeah, it is. And we can talk about, police tactics and so on, and defunding the police and changing the police. And I think we should. And we should involve the police in that particular aspect. But the simple truth of it all is that a man was murdered. Really, the permission to murder him was the color of his skin. There. I've said it.
I agree with you.
I mean, it's apart from anything else, apart from the horrible racism, it's ridiculous that American citizens can't drive down the street without being stopped simply because they have a darker color than mine.
Do you have a different perspective on how we're going to change as a people, what the change is going to involve? I don't know. I don't know what I'm looking for, actually, but I'm trying to figure out if there's a question in there with your experience. Seeking the wisdom of someone a little bit older who's been around a little longer, I guess.
I think we should throw away the wisdom of a lot of older people. The more young people I talk to, the smarter I realize they are. The more they know, the less their minds are clouded with a bunch of nonsense. In a feeble attempt to be moderately amusing, you've probably heard of Marie Kondo, the Japanese lady who tries to help you clean up. Well, I think we should have Marie Kondo go through our brains and throw away a whole bunch of old thoughts.
I love it.
And a lot of old cultural thoughts. I am embarrassed when I hear some of my friends talk, friends my age. We've lived on this planet a long time. We don't know everything. We don't. I'm sure you were like me when you were like 10 or 11 and you thought, when I get to 40, I will know everything. People of 40 must be so smart. And then you won't have to learn anything else. And now I find that I'm at an advanced age and I know less than when I started.
I think that's actually great.
And I'm having to change I'm changing all my opinions because if you look at the world around is changing.
Mm-hmm.
And if I may make a grand political statement, I think the big split in the world right now is between people who are terrified of change and the people who really don't mind it or welcome it.
So, Oliver, from your perspective, how do you think we should move forward, not just as white people, but more importantly, as human beings?
Oh, well, I hate to be so silly about it, but I think we should move forward with kindness.
I don't think that's silly. I think that's spot on.
One of the most remarkable things my daughter ever taught me, that's the good thing about having kids because you get educated whether you like it or not, was to treat people like human beings. When you're calling about your health insurance, you are actually calling a human being.
Mm-hmm.
One tends to forget that.
Yeah, agreed. Are you optimistic about the future despite your Britishness?
I'm not optimistic about the future of Britain because it's been dismantled by the Conservative Party.
I meant the future of the world at large, the human race.
I hope so, yeah, although I'm just wondering whether the insects have a better shot at it than we do. So I was very kind. I found a baby praying mantis on a bunch of flowers, and I thought, there's the future.
Even though technically, legally, you can't. If you were elected president tomorrow, what are the first three things you would do?
Well, if I were Governor General.
Governor General of the United States, what are your first three things?
Governor General of the United Colonies.
Sorry, first three things you would do as Governor General of the United Colonies.
That's an extraordinarily good question.
Sorry, I should probably rephrase that question, actually. What are the three things... What are the first three things you would do as Governor General of the Great British Colonies of the Americas?
Well, I would do what they've done in Canada. I would have all instructions written in 3 languages so that there would be a chance that I would be able to put together things like IKEA. If it's in more than one language, I have a shot at it. I would have a large music academy in every city.
Awesome.
And I would have a big group of people rewriting the history of the United States and colonies like a Wikipedia thing. That's what I would do. And I would make myself king of scones.
I hate your fucking country.
You love our scones.
Oliver, are you happy with the journey of life overall?
I hope there aren't too many people listening because it will blow my identity. Yes, I am. I wish I could learn all the languages in the world.
Mm.
I wish I could learn to cook all the breads in the world. I wish I could drink all the wines and spirits of the world, and that's not going to be possible. But the joy of life is to keep on learning and changing. Really,
Oliver, has your answer changed about what you're most passionate in life about right now?
No. Is that the right answer?
Great, we'll just leave it at
that. No, it hasn't. I mean, learning new shit. How's that? It's Mr. Intellectual.
Learning new shit.
Learning new shit. That's my T-shirt.
What do you think is the purpose of life?
Life is the purpose of life. I mean, living is the purpose of life. That's it. I mean, I don't think it gets much simpler.
Well, Oliver, I know that you and I could talk for 2 or 3 more hours and have an absolute blast, but I do have to at some point end this so my listeners don't fall asleep. But I really, really appreciate you following up again and being here. It's always such a pleasure to laugh and joke with you. And I wish you the best of luck with everything. I know we'll see you guys hopefully as soon as the social distancing thing is removed and we can hang out again. And if there's anything else you'd like to say at this point, please go ahead.
Yeah, in the next week or two, I'm going to bring you some real scones and leave them outside your door so that you're not bereft.
That'd be great. The raccoons around the corner actually need to eat. So, I do want to say, actually, I enjoy your scones, and I think they're actually quite delicious. They're just not as good as mine. That's all there is to it.
We know that's not true. Anyway, thank you so much. It's an enormous pleasure. And
it is always.
And I and Tigger will be dreaming about traveling.
Have a wonderful day and take care of yourself.
Thank you so much.
Friends and listeners, we're in the process of building a really cool new section of the website all about food and recipes. But before that premieres, we wanted to put the scone recipe out there so you can see how wrong Oliver really is. Go over to memoriesofamoonbird.com, click on the recipes section, and you'll see my scone recipe, my awesome scone recipe, waiting for you with bated breath. And until then, if you'd like some more Moonbird in your life, and hey, who wouldn't, head on over to memoriesofamoonbird.com or visit me on social media at memoriesofamoonbird. Cheerio!